Nyanje chimur zordan hingmi jang zonay munam chimur nga gyada. Pakiratan ngam zanto shirmar do tumba tukje chanla kibsham sarara. Nechan rawar zarngi shangam sarara. Jawar tukji shirlo yilar. Jime bangso shala suranda gongtya toban bawara shinjirlo.
The supreme, profound and subtle Dharma is rarely encountered in eons. Now we hear and follow it, may we realize the Tathagata's meaning. To liberate beings, please generate bodhicitta before teaching. We will continue to discuss what the Buddha originally taught, specifically the Udāna Sūtra, which was compiled by the Arhat Dharmatrata after the Buddha's passing. As for the Udāna Sūtra, we are currently discussing the important chapter on attachment in detail. Yesterday, some people asked about the chapter on attachment and how it relates to the previous chapter on desire and what differences there are with the chapter on craving. This particular point, which is quite significant, is not very clearly explained in the existing commentaries. While it is indeed discussed, primarily in connection with the concept of vigilance, in actual fact, as we previously mentioned earlier, specifically regarding these two preceding chapters, there is a general explanation and a specific explanation, that's how it is. In between, a section on diligence was added, vigilant practice. Then, as for the fifth chapter, it primarily discusses, yes, regarding this particular chapter on attachment, I truly think that on one hand it is indeed about the concept of attachment itself, and on a much deeper and more profound level, it analyzes this subject matter in a very exceptionally thorough way. On the other hand, the primary focus should be on the inherent faults of human desire and craving, because if we want to be vigilant and practice well, if our mind is deeply tainted by attachment and desire, then all our diligent practice and spiritual efforts cannot be effectively carried out. So, we will also discuss this in more detail later on. Even if you possess wisdom, even if you have good mindfulness and truly clear awareness, but if you become unfortunately tainted by the faults of breaking precepts, then all your extensive knowledge and learning, and even your constant mindfulness and clear awareness, all these virtues will be completely lost. So, as for this attachment, in actual fact, within the context of vigilance, it is truly one of the greatest obstacles. If you possess this particular attachment, then your practice absolutely cannot succeed. Therefore, it is entirely possible to explain it in this precise sequence. And that should be acceptable as well. So today, continuing on with our discussion, we will be discussing the following topics.
Duba shivra kirwa na nyendan zapshi mangbo tak yen rang di sam nyangan dang dungar charwe erdugdang charwe dungar njir.
If a loved one dies, and there are many relatives and friends, one will inevitably be trapped in profound grief for a very long time. The intense pain of separation from cherished loved ones is truly unbearable. So, what exactly is mainly being discussed here? As for the story related to this particular event, there was a revered Brahmin who had a beloved son, and when the son eventually reached the tender age of 7 years, he tragically died. After he unexpectedly died, yes, this story should perhaps be explained better later on. Here it is not discussed separately. It seems that there is no story included in the commentary here. Looking at just the 6 verses discussed earlier, this is the 7th one. You will be able to check it when the appropriate moment comes. What this means, what I'm trying to say, is that in our current worldly life, people have deep feelings of love for one another, truly indeed. And some individuals also possess a genuine affection and profound appreciation for other living, sentient beings, as well as for various inanimate material possessions and cherished items. Some people don't like other people, but are really fond of their worldly material possessions. They love money as much as their own lives and are extremely greedy for wealth. It's as if money is their very life itself, and there are indeed people who are especially greedy for money like this. But here, the main focus is on people. The main and most crucial point is about people, specifically if the person you deeply love, if your cherished loved one tragically dies, then what? Their entire life, the very continuity of their existence, has already been irrevocably cut off. It's completely over. At this profoundly difficult time, in fact, whether it's their immediate relatives, their closest friends, or indeed most of the other people around them, many people, including parents, siblings, and other close family members, all these individuals remain for an extended period, deeply and profoundly trapped in overwhelming sorrow, intense grief, and agonizing pain. So this profound kind of love, in reality, often becomes a very painful and enduring cause for suffering. The suffering of separation from loved ones is unbearable. After a loved one is gone, it's as if we've drunk poison. If you've been truly poisoned, then your body and mind struggle. The pain is unbearable, extremely hard to endure. So generally speaking, when someone you deeply love has departed, many people simply find themselves unable to accept this profound reality. Even in this modern era, phenomenon remains very common throughout the world. Whether it's about our beloved parents or other cherished loved ones, even those who are a bit more distant from us, such as the so-called grandfathers and grandmothers, we hold them dear. When they pass away, the grief experienced is profoundly intense, and the persistent pain continues to linger, making it utterly impossible to live a normal, functional life. Maybe everyone indeed has some loved ones around them, including parents, as mentioned in the notes. If one's beloved parents pass away, for a very long time afterwards, you might keep constantly recalling and deeply missing them. Among those of us who are here, it's possible that some have already lost such loved ones, including myself. My father passed away quite early. I was about 31 or 32 years old at the time. He passed away in 1995. Even now, sometimes I can still recall certain things. But as for my mother, it's almost 10 years since she passed away. Yet sometimes her face quite often appears in my mind indeed. Some of the things she said, or some specific places we went to when I was a young child, at those particular times, these cherished memories naturally surface and emerge in my heart. So for a person, when someone you deeply love and are truly attached to leaves this world forever, there's truly nothing left at all, not even a single strand of hair perhaps. So for many of us here, of course, the love we have for our teacher isn't necessarily a selfish kind of love, but the longing for our teacher, the cherished remembrance of our esteemed teacher. For some individuals with strong and unwavering faith, this kind of yearning may only grow heavier with time, not fading away, but actually becoming much, even deeper and deeper. Such situations do exist. So when it comes to loving those close to us, it can still be extremely painful. For some, the pain is especially intense right at that moment. For others, the pain may actually grow worse over time. This kind of phenomenon also exists, no matter what. If one remains truly trapped in profound grief for a very long time, it is also extremely painful, of course, when people unfortunately die. Most people do have certain habits. What exactly are these habits? At that particular time, they will wail loudly and cry. This kind of behavior is not very good. Some Buddhist scriptures also mention that for those who have died, it can actually bring about some significant and unforeseen harm. In the distant past, within the profound and detailed biography of Linsa Chokyi, her remarkable travels in the Bardo also explicitly mentions that at the very initial beginning it distinctly seemed like she herself was not a Dakini. Later, because of an extraordinary experience traveling in the Bardo, she was very often able to travel quite freely indeed between the realm of the living and the realm of the dead, delivering all kinds of messages. At the time when she left, it seemed as if just her body had turned into a pig. Her own clothes were draped over the pig. Then her friends and relatives utterly ignored her. Later, it seemed that they realized she had died. Everyone began to wail loudly. At that very moment, from her own personal perspective, pus, blood, and sharp iron pellets rained down upon her body, along with all kinds of sharp, jagged hailstones, causing her tremendous and unbearable pain. So for those who have sadly passed away, if someone you love very dearly passes away, it's best not to cry if you can help it. Of course, not crying may make you feel terrible inside, and sometimes it may be impossible to hold back. But for most of us, indeed, however, though, we all experience this kind of pain. So for someone who has dearly and recently passed away, unfortunately, there really isn't any benefit in this. From the perspective of those who have just passed away, there are also many different kinds of profound suffering and distress. Some people, even before they physically die, in today's society, things are a bit complicated. Some people are resuscitated before they actually die, and the process of resuscitation is extremely uncomfortable. Generally speaking, most people who die in hospitals require resuscitation. Legally speaking, if doctors perform resuscitation, they can avoid some trouble in the end. So basically, they will almost always attempt resuscitation. But in some critical cases, including organ harvesting nowadays, this alarming phenomenon is also very serious, and it's becoming more and more severe. Now, there are even some unscrupulous businessmen operating on the battlefield who work directly with hospitals and have started to establish connections with hospitals. Then, before the patient has even tragically died, they directly and immediately remove the patient's vital organs in the hospital, including the beating heart, the functioning lungs, and the essential liver. All of these can be transplanted, and once the transplant is done, because the person isn't completely dead yet, they can transplant these organs. There are also, unfortunately, many missing children nowadays, sadly, and there are many traces of them in hospitals as well. No matter where in society this happens, especially in places like northern Myanmar, they take people over there, and after bringing them there, every single one of them was sold to various hospitals, where these medical institutions then proceed to kill them alive in a truly disturbing manner. And after killing them, their whole body becomes valuable. Except for a very few individuals who have left a will while they were alive, they can donate their own organs, including corneas, livers, kidneys. But this is extremely rare. There are very few people who donate their body to society. It's not particularly common. So in today's society, things are also quite complicated. And now, with the so-called significant advances in modern medical technology, as it continually gets better and better, many things from living people are becoming more and more valuable. Nowadays, many wealthy people want to extract many cells from living bodies, some for nourishing the liver, some for the lungs, some for the kidneys. All sorts of different purposes. There are all kinds of situations. Some people keep replacing them, and after the replacement, they appear a bit younger on the surface because their cells are constantly being transplanted or continuously replaced. There are such cases. That day, in our memoir, Journey to the West, the Rockefeller who appeared, didn't His Holiness actually mention him at that time? There was indeed someone in their family. I remember he passed away in 2017, right? The Rockefellers, in general, in their family, they often talk about this person. I think his name was David or something like that. When he died, he was 101 years old. But throughout his entire long life, he had 6 heart transplants. Altogether, some people say he spent $100 million, while others say $300 million. Anyway, it was over $100 million. His whole body, his heart kept being replaced again and again, a grand total of 6 distinct times. As for the precise and exact sources of those particular hearts, it is undeniably and exceptionally hard to say. It's not necessarily that so many people donated them. So in this case, for a rich person, if there's something wrong with his body, he definitely won't be attached to money. If it costs thousands, tens of thousands, or even hundreds of millions, it wouldn't be a problem for him. And as for hospitals, of course, not all hospitals, but a very small number of hospitals, internally, they possess all kinds of convenient and efficient methods. Because when money in huge sums and profits are significantly involved, if society has no moral bottom line, then anything can truly happen. So for ordinary people in this world, death is also very painful now. Indeed, And dying is very painful too. After death, of course, those who are close to them will also suffer deeply for an extended period of time. But after some time passes, if it's not a direct blood relationship, some people may gradually and slowly recover over time. No matter what in this world we truly live in, when someone we deeply love inevitably leaves this world forever from our lives, there is always a little pain deep inside our very own hearts. But if we really observe this carefully, it's actually nothing special. Partings happen everywhere in the world. This is a general rule. In the Buddha's collection of Past Deeds Sutra, it also says, all sentient beings experience birth, aging, and inevitably separation. All living beings are born and will eventually perish. If there is birth, there will certainly be aging. If there is aging, there will inevitably be death. This a natural and unavoidable progression, and then there will always be parting. Among all the sufferings in this world, the pain of being separated from those we love is one of the greatest. But for those who truly understand the truth, they may also realize that although someone has left, this is simply the truth of things. This is truly the impermanent nature of all phenomena. No one can truly stop it. Once you understand this, you come to know the truth of many things. Especially, you need to understand many principles like this. I think listening and learning is extremely important. In the following sections of our Udāna Sūtra, in chapter 22, a section is dedicated to listening and learning. In this section on listening, it says, through hearing, one understands all phenomena. Through hearing, one avoids all evils. After listening and learning, one comes to know all phenomena. After listening and learning, one can restrain all evil actions, and so on. So I think that many of our Dharma friends now, including those present here, as well as those in other places, are all listening very attentively. I also feel that at this time everyone, maybe even though I don't speak very well, and there may not be much worth listening to, but no matter what, however, we are still based on teachings from Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and great masters, doing our best to share with everyone. So if you always do your very best to listen carefully indeed, perhaps whether it is the sacred sutra or something else indeed, or other Dharma teachings, try your best to just listen. If you don't do this, your mind might quickly become very rigid, and on top of that, you indeed won't make much progress yourself. Even if you listen to just 1 or 2 classes, as long as you continue without interruption, eventually your own continuum will definitely change. So for us, really including some Dharma teachers, Khenpos and Khenmos, when the time eventually comes, because you actually have a certain title, you may not want to listen anymore. This kind of thing might indeed happen. But what's even more truly important is, especially for some of our Khenpos and Khenmos here, who will later provide guidance in various places, these classical teachings are very much needed. Sometimes if we directly teach Dzogchen, it's not always really appropriate either. If we teach the Pramana or the Abhidharmakosha, most people in the world may not have the right capacity for that either. What is more needed is something like the Udāna Sūtra. No matter which corner of the world people are from, they can accept it. Take, for example, the principle of attachment, the principle of vigilance, and also the earlier teachings on impermanence. Many of the teachings that follow are especially suitable for the mindset of people today. They can be shared with the general public. In this way, when we look at teachings that really benefit everyone, we should first study them well ourselves. After mastering them, we can then share them with others. In this way, others will definitely benefit. So the principles here, everyone should also gradually become familiar with them step by step.
You see, there
are so many there here. There are 5 love. In the Tibetan version there are 5, while in the Chinese version there seem to be 4. If there is no love, there is no attachment. Without it, there is no bondage. Therefore, love itself is a fault, and we should not give rise to attachment. This is precisely what I just mentioned right here. It seems to be from our commentary, or perhaps I found it somewhere else. There was a Brahmin who actually had a son, But misfortune struck unexpectedly one day, without any warning or sign at all. When his son was 7 years old, he abruptly passed away. He died at the age of 7. The Brahmin was extremely heartbroken and searched everywhere for him. Later, he decided he had to find Yama, the Lord of Death. He went to Yama's dark realm, hoping to find a way to bring his beloved son back to life. This is also precisely how it's often told in many traditional folk stories. Buddhist scriptures mention this. At death, Yama brings the deceased to the intermediate state, to Yama's court. At this point, some very wise Brahmins advised him that about 400 li to the west from this very spot here indeed, there is a certain river, and if he observed fasting and prayed by the river bank, he would be able to communicate directly with Yama, the powerful Lord of Death. He followed their instructions and practiced accordingly. In the end, he actually really did find Yama. He then pleaded with Yama, asking if his beloved son could be released and safely returned to him. At that very moment, Yama, the god of death, graciously agreed. In the very end, he finally found his beloved son. But his own son, by that time, might have already become someone else's child. So when he just then went to find him, the young child completely ignored him. Instead, the child harshly scolded him, saying with a disdainful tone, "You foolish old man, what exactly are you doing here?" The man, taken aback, then said, "Aren't I your own father? We used to be a family. I really want you to come back." In the end, the child said, "This is a very foolish thing to do." Now, if we are truly together, it's only a temporary gathering, a fleeting moment. It doesn't really have any profound meaning. Now I have my own family, my own beloved parents. I don't want to go back, so he went back by himself. Then the old man finally returned to the human world. After returning to the human world, he felt troubled in his heart. He went to the Buddha and earnestly pleaded, saying, "I went to the bardo, and I have now at long last returned to this world. But after coming back, I have been in pain." The Buddha also scolded him, saying, "You are very foolish. Actually, even if you were together before, it didn't really mean anything. Everything, all gatherings, are temporary. In the end, they will disperse." While scolding him, the Buddha also encouraged him to become a monk. After he became a monk, he practiced diligently. Eventually, after much dedicated practice, he attained the ultimate fruit of arhatship. In response to this significant achievement, the Buddha seemed to have recited this verse or something like that. I think so. Is there anything in the commentary? Let me check a bit. It seems that in our commentary, sometimes it's easier to understand, and sometimes it's not so easy to understand. When translating, it seemed like it was already clear enough. But now, after some time has passed, there are some principles I can't recall anymore. This kind of thing happens. So, what is the truly literal meaning of this verse here? If there is neither attachment nor aversion, then there is no bondage or restraint for that person. If a person does not have, because they have already understood, through studying Buddhism or through their own practice, in the end they no longer have such a strong attachment to love or a strong aversion. If there is indeed attachment, it is often accompanied by a troubled mind, being especially attached, unwilling to let go, and developing a greedy kind of love for someone. On the other hand, if there is a strong aversion, it comes with a mind of anger, a deeply troubled, hateful kind of aversion. If a person has neither attachment nor hatred, at this particular point, in fact, they are indeed completely free. They are no longer bound by the fetters, the 4 kinds of bonds. As for fetters, what we often talk about is the common fetter of craving, the pervasive fetter of malice, as well as the restrictive fetter of attachment to rules and rituals, and the stubborn fetter of holding on to views. Yes, well, regarding these 4 kinds of fetters, indeed, the way they are categorized here should be like this. 1 is attachment and craving. 1 is malice, the attachment of hatred towards someone. Another is believing that one relies on something, such as relying on the 5 fires or keeping pig precepts, dog precepts, and so on. And another is thinking that one's own views are absolutely correct, regarding some wrong views as if they were right views. There is no bondage of these 4 kinds of fetters. If one has already realized all dharmas, whether it is a state of equality and single taste, or if this person, through practice, no longer has very strong attachments of love or aversion. Of course, there are some people who may indeed be born like a stone, with little feeling, not understanding good or bad. Those muddle-headed people, they shouldn't be counted among these here. Otherwise, even especially dull-witted people would become people of the highest realization, and that shouldn't be the case. So, for those individuals who have not truly cut off their attachment and desire, in the very end within samsara, they will remain. The causes and conditions for bondage are not eliminated, so what should we understand? Actually, this attachment is itself a sin. Therefore, attachment is a sin. We should not give rise to attachment. So, if we truly and deeply analyze this profound attachment in reality, it undeniably contains countless evils, causing suffering and harm to all, and is also the fundamental root of all evils. As we mentioned earlier, the kind of hatred that doesn't involve love is usually easy to get rid of because our own personal and unique mind stream isn't used to it and feels uncomfortable with it. If you want to cut off anger, I'm willing to let it go. No one actually wants to lose their temper. After losing your temper, you also feel awkward and very upset. You think, oh, I shouldn't have said that day. I shouldn't have gotten so angry that day. You end up feeling especially sad about it yourself, so you really don't want to do it again. But when it comes to attachment, we always think this is something. Just as what Master Lianchi said yesterday, it's like poison mixed into delicious food. Wow, it seems so good that you really don't want to give it up at all. A great many people nowadays also truly feel that love is indeed a very interesting and quite complex state of mind. That's how they see it, right? So it's not easy to let go of. But if we truly realize that this attachment, as ordinary people, we all tend to think that love is a profoundly positive word, a beautiful sentiment, a very beautiful and profound word. How truly great love is. Yesterday I also mentioned some interesting things about the West and the East, mainly derived from official sources in the wider media and the broader art world. There are indeed especially moving and truly praiseworthy stories that are to be shared. Everyone truly thinks that's how it really should be. But in actual fact, when we look at it with wisdom, it's not really like that. That's just how people generally talk about it. And we can't deny that. We're not that foolish, Buddhists' worldly conventions. These fundamental worldly sayings, these are things we cannot deny. Bodhisattva Chandrakirti said he would not slander worldly conventions either. The Buddha also said, I go along with the world. So the principles truly spoken of in the world, we do not deny them at all, indeed. No matter what, Buddhists would never deny them, but in reality, when we truly examine things, they are not as people believe them to be. It's not that all phenomena are permanent, nor that all phenomena are truly blissful, or that all phenomena are indeed ultimately real. That is simply not the case at all. So I think that many of us Buddhists, those who really love to listen, reflect, and also study, cannot, like some people, completely eradicate the seeds of attachment and hatred. This is quite difficult. It requires a process cutting through practice and insight. Only after enlightenment can these be eliminated, but at least while we are on path, as we gradually study the principles of Buddhism, in the end, compared to those in the world who have never engaged in listening, reflection, or study, there will definitely be a difference. For example, worldly people have never known the impermanence that occurs moment by moment. But we understand impermanence. When we know impermanence, and impermanence manifests before us, I also understand this principle. Including those mistaken attachments, we should have a clearer understanding of them as well. Therefore, in this world, we should not indeed give rise to any such attachment, because if we become attached, it actually brings a lot of suffering to ourselves as well. It brings a great deal of this kind of suffering to ourselves. We bring a lot of this suffering upon ourselves. In fact, it also does not accord with reality. Whether it's towards our family or our loved ones, all forms of attachment are actually mistaken. For example, just like flocks of birds and beasts that gather for a while and then scatter in all directions, this was mentioned in the past, in the Sutra on Dispelling Worries as spoken by the Buddha. Birth and death are truly the same, so why cling to sorrow and suffering? That is to say, in our worldly life, the gatherings of people are essentially like this. For example, birds and various beasts often gather together, but after a little while, each individual creature typically goes its own separate way. It's precisely the same principle. When our beloved family and dear friends come together, in reality, it is only for a short time, before we part ways as well. So why should we continue to hold on to such profound sorrow and deep suffering, allowing them to weigh us down? Regarding many of these fundamental and often challenging truths, how exactly should I articulate or express them? Those who understand impermanence, no matter if it's the departure of people very close to us, these kinds of things should offer at least a little bit of help. Back when we were studying in Ganzi, there were quite a few students from Liangshan at that time, approximately 9 of them to be precise. We were in a 4-year program and they were in a 2-year program. After 2 years, they had to leave. Because we had spent 2 years together in the same classroom, when it came time for them to leave, when they were about to go, we really did feel a lot of pain at that time. I was in a lot of pain and so were they also. Even those who were leaving felt a lot of pain. At night we all cried together, just kept crying. Actually, we were only in our 20s back then. We shouldn't have been so attached. Then, very early in the morning, our whole class went to see them off, crying loudly. We kept crying all the way to the bus station, everyone did. Now, when I look back at those times, it's actually kind of funny. Why were we so heartbroken? Actually, back then, maybe transportation wasn't very convenient for us either. Once someone left, it felt like we'd never see them again. There wasn't much else between us. We had just spent 2 full years together in the very same classroom, side by side. We ate together in the cafeteria at meal times and studied together as well. But when they suddenly had to leave at the end, it was still really painful. Before that, there was a Khenpo living near us now. He also dropped out of school. When he eventually left, it was also an extremely painful moment. A great many people cried profusely. Later, in the 3rd year when I left, I thought maybe they wouldn't feel the same way about me, but maybe they would cry too. So I left quietly, without letting them know. So at that particular time, maybe I was a bit immature or something like that, and felt a very special kind of pain. Maybe now, looking back at everything, a lot of people our age would have felt the same. We were all in our 20s back then. So maybe for people in the world, it's really true that sometimes we also see that in some ways it's entirely understandable. You often see people going to all kinds of different arduous battlefields, and later their beloved sons had left. After that, they also suffered a great deal of pain and hardship. In the past, in our Tibetan region, there was a servant girl from Golok, and her song of sorrow, I just found the Tibetan lyrics today, when her very own family members passed away, she sang many sad and deeply moving songs. Many of our elders can still sing them beautifully too. Today, a teacher happened to provide them to me at exactly the right moment. This afternoon, I didn't really prepare my lesson as thoroughly as I should have. I was just looking at that song of sorrow, reading it. My mother used to sing many of them. I was wondering if the ones in this book this time are the same as the ones she and others used to sing. So, for those people, when their own beloved family members tragically died on the brutal battlefield, they would naturally begin to sing such deeply sorrowful and poignant songs and so on. Looking at it from this perspective, in principle one truly shouldn't be sad, but despite that, there is still an undeniable sadness that lingers. Later, I plan to observe people here when the person they cherish and love most deeply leaves their lives. Let's just see how they react. Or when it's someone they truly and deeply hate the most, actually, even if the person you absolutely despise doesn't leave, it's still quite a bit painful. Some of us, for example, during the very significant time of His Holiness, there were some people who weren't very good, some who broke their vows, things like that. And many people would often say, why hasn't this person died yet? There's that kind of sentiment too. But actually, Buddhists shouldn't have this kind of hatred. We shouldn't have this kind of feeling. But human nature is like this. When it comes to bad people, why do they keep appearing before my eyes every day? It seems like this is truly the opposite of love. Perhaps among Vajra friends, this kind of thing doesn't really happen. But in the past, in the wider world, it certainly did exist. Wouldn't it be absolutely great if this person had left a little earlier? When someone you don't love keeps showing up, it's also very painful. And when someone you truly love unexpectedly leaves your life quickly, that experience is also very deeply painful. Actually, all of these are just very fleeting and illusory attachments. They're unreasonable. In this regard, we should understand it in principle. Actually, this Buddhist principle This is how I see it. Whenever we talk about Buddhist principles, theoretically, there's absolutely no way to truly refute them, indeed. That's a very good thing. Take impermanence, for example, or non-negligence, for example. All of these are truly very much in line with positive human emotions and feelings. No one can truly and completely break through this. This is something profoundly meaningful and deeply significant. So, some of the fundamental principles in Buddhism, whether you actively practice or diligently study them, are truly meaningful. In this human world, to encounter such truths is also truly very especially fortunate indeed. Those who cling to attachment abandon right principles. They do not enter into practices that bring true peace. Having strayed from the path of joyful practice, we should instead admire those who delight in the Dharma. According to this translated verse, it is somewhat easier to explain. Translation is even more troublesome. If you don't believe me, I encourage you to have a try. Aren't you supposed to be the translation class after all? Let's see how the translation class does with it. How about trying to translate this verse? Those who cling to attachment abandon right principles. This is also an analysis of the aspect of attachment. For some people, whether they deeply contemplate or are truly attached to love, in reality they have abandoned the right principle. The right principle, whether it truly benefits oneself or genuinely helps to eliminate the afflictions of the three realms, these have basically already been completely abandoned. If a person in their heart is extremely attached to love, then their regard for the right principle may become weaker. Once the right principle is abandoned, nothing can be done. They won't engage in any virtuous or joyful activities. So what won't they move towards? They won't engage in the fundamental causes of happiness and virtuous actions or in such behaviors at all. They won't practice virtuous deeds either. A person is like someone who has indeed been struck by an arrow, and people often talk about the arrow of love, right? If someone is struck by the arrow of love, they will no longer seek it. They won't pursue it either, listening, contemplating, or practicing principles of self and other benefit. They have no interest in any of it. Every day, they may just be distracted by various things, not earnestly practicing virtuous deeds themselves, nor truly embodying those noble principles. And as for genuinely benefiting themselves, they naturally drift away from what? The path of joyful conduct. They won't follow the path of the three trainings in virtuous practice. They won't pursue any of these paths. And gradually, slowly, they will move toward the realms of hell, hungry ghosts, and animals, within the realms of suffering. Therefore, we should admire or be eager to seek what precisely? To be truly willing to seek the profound Dharma of happiness. As for this Dharma of happiness, it is indeed the sacred Dharma that thoroughly purifies and completely eliminates all attachment. At that significant time, when the Buddha was residing at the renowned Bamboo Grove Monastery, he spoke to 3 venerable monks. What exactly did he talk about with them? He said, "Monks, listen carefully to my words. There is a hell, a place of suffering, called the realm of the 6 contacts. As for the nature of these 6 contacts, our 6 contacts are, in essence, the sensory and mental faculties through which we interact with the world around us. That is, the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, and the mind. These 6 contacts encounter its respective sense objects. This forms the hellish realm of the 6 sense contacts. As for this hell, it actually brings about some really unpleasant experiences for most people. This is due to practicing unwholesome actions and not engaging in virtuous deeds. There is also a realm of the 6 contacts that is pleasant. This comes from practicing virtuous actions and staying away from unwholesome actions, and so on. The Buddha meticulously explained this profound concept in great detail within the sacred sutras. It is precisely because of this fundamental reason that he discussed here the distinction between the powerful emotions of attachment and aversion. If one gives rise to attachment, all the correct principles of the world may be abandoned, and one will engage in more and more unwholesome actions. The final result they obtain is to burn in hell, experiencing great suffering. On the other hand, if one truly distances themselves from all attachment and observes their own mind, then they will certainly receive the praise of gods and humans in this very world, and at the same time will also not fall into the lower realms. On the contrary, they will temporarily be reborn in the heavens or good realms and ultimately attain liberation. Therefore, when we practice virtuous actions, we should have a profound sense of admiration, or at least a strong motivation in this particular regard. Aspire to be free from attachment, not driven by desire. As for our own mind, it should be free from such attachment, not controlled by greed and clinging. Otherwise, we will commit unwholesome actions and abandon the path of happiness. If our actions are unwholesome, they will abandon the path of happiness. This should be from the Sutra of the Unreceding Dharma Wheel. I believe that's what it says. The meaning here is that we should only seek, to the best of our ability, those teachings free from desire and strive to pursue those virtuous teachings that bring happiness. As for the teachings that bring happiness, generally they include seeking the view of Madhyamaka, or the wisdom of emptiness, or teachings such as Dzogchen and Mahamudra. As we discussed the other day, each and every one of us here, perhaps aside from the listening and contemplation we do in class, each of us should have something for our mind to focus on. Whether it's your personal yidam or dharma protector, or you should have a meditation practice that is truly the most meaningful to your own personal inner mind. In terms of understanding your own mind, no matter which particular school or any specific tradition you belong to, within your own dharma lineage, you should find what you feel is the most meaningful in your life, the practice that is most beneficial to your mind, a particular text or a specific practice. These are all very necessary, because after all, we are all people who should be studying theory, people who listen, contemplate, and practice. If we were ordinary worldly people, they too are truly single-minded in seeking their own sources of happiness. And when it comes to these sources of happiness, some people are actually quite diligent. Today, Khenpo Novu went back. He went to visit his family or relatives because someone dear had unfortunately passed away. I had heard about this news before as well. Apparently that elderly person was 98 years old. Throughout his life, he recited 1.3 billion Avalokiteshvara mantras. I wonder among us here how many hundreds of millions of mantras many Dharma friends have recited by now. If you haven't reached 100 million, have you at least reached tens of millions or a few million? I don't know. He also recited Amitabha's name 3 million times. Over his lifetime, 98 years, his whole life. Actually, in this case, when it comes to true liberation, for him, it should be absolutely nothing to worry about anymore. But for some of us, even though we possess the very same human body, some individuals may not necessarily live that long. But for just some people, in their short lives, the merit of reciting the Avalokiteshvara mantra is so great. As we discussed a few years ago, the Mahayana Ratnaraja Sutra describes so much about it. If someone truly puts in the effort throughout their life and really recites like this, but some people haven't recited 100 million times, let alone a billion. They haven't even reached 10 million. They have also obtained a human body. But some people engage in very meaningful practices in pursuit of happiness. So fundamentally, we should understand what are the causes of happiness and what are the causes of suffering. This is something we must know, otherwise studying every day will still feel exhausting. It might actually be better to simply play on your phone or perhaps surf the internet. If you genuinely don't have any money at all, it might be a bit difficult to travel around everywhere. If you have money, you can travel to the east, west, south, and north. That might be better. But if you fail in spiritual practice and in worldly matters, isn't that a bit of a pity? It would be better to just stick with simple pleasures. However, if you succeed in spiritual practice, then these things are some minor benefits, a kind of happiness that is meaningless and it is nothing special. If someone is truly wise and gains genuine realization in the Dharma, then this may be our most lasting and enduring happiness. The bondage of wondrous forms and pleasures in all realms of humans and devas creates negative karma and brings loss, carried away by old age and death. This means that Actually, let me first tell you the story behind this. It is said that when the Buddha was residing in the city of Vaishali, there was a merchant's son who, at the age of 12 years, one day he went up a tall tree and picked a lot of beautiful flowers. I believe it was a magnificent sal tree. He meticulously picked a large quantity of these lovely flowers and then brought them all the way back home. He generously gave these beautiful flowers to his friends and relatives. After giving away all the flowers, his wife became very unhappy. Sometimes it truly seems like it was just a very small, insignificant matter, because he didn't give her any of the flowers. So his wife was probably still very young as well. They were already married at the age of 12. In India, perhaps it was indeed like that in the past. Then his wife became quite dissatisfied. After becoming dissatisfied, she might have gotten very angry. So she went to pick the beautiful flowers herself. In the end, she bravely climbed up the tall tree herself. The fragile branch broke and she started to fall. As she was falling, it is said that nearby there was a place called Monkey Pond. At that time, the Buddha was teaching the Dharma to sentient beings. It seems that, without realizing it, the gentle soothing sound of the Buddha's teaching reached her attentive ears. At that moment, because of the power of this merit, she attained nirvana. It wasn't specified what noble fruition she attained, although she had achieved a noble fruition. But her relatives and friends, they gathered together and were extremely pained, grieving continuously. At the same time, at that moment, there was a diva in the heavenly realm. He too had gone to the beautiful paradise tree to pick lovely flowers at that time. While carefully picking flowers from the tree, he also died as a result. Then the entire assembly of the great divine devas gathered together as well, and they too were grieving. So, in direct response to these two significant events, the Buddha then began to recite this profound verse. The essential meaning was that, because just now, it was mainly their attachment to the beauty of the flowers that was indeed the primary and main point being made. And as for truly exquisite forms, whether it is people or other things, these extremely beautiful forms, when enjoyed, bring great happiness. But they will also bind you. Because of this cause and condition, whether in the human world or the heavenly realm, among many in the heavenly realm, all these ordinary beings who are attached to beautiful forms, to beautiful sounds, and to beautiful tastes, these sentient beings, are in fact bound by them. Once bound by them, in human world or heavenly realm, generally speaking, in the heavenly realm, it refers to the four great heavenly kings and the like, and in our human world, it mainly refers to the people of Jambudvipa. Because they are attached to such beautiful forms, they create truly extremely serious and harmful negative karma, indeed, and commit offenses. Because of these offenses, they experience their own profound suffering and ultimate ruin. Both body and mind are damaged. In the end, as they go through aging and death, turning again and again, their suffering continually never ceases. They are reborn within the three realms and experience this suffering. Therefore, in our complex world, if we become deeply attached to any fleeting form or any transient sound and cling to them excessively and without moderation, in the end, we will inevitably only bring significant harm to ourselves and others, or suffering upon ourselves. So, whatever it is that we truly see before our very eyes, no matter what its specific color or hue may be, or whatever sound we actually hear at these times really, ordinary people naturally have their minds captivated by them. But in reality, this is also a kind of fault. If this continues for a long time, and we do not apply any antidote, we will definitely experience the consequences of this. And even in this very life, it is ultimately meaningless. Let's not even talk about anything else. In the great commentary on the aspiration to Sukhavati, there are many stories about attachment. For example, a monk who was attached to his alms bowl. In the end, he tragically turned into a venomous, poisonous snake and was subsequently reborn inside the alms bowl. Some individuals were deeply attached to their coins and meticulously hid these coins inside the sturdy wall, and then were reborn as certain sentient beings, entwined around that wall. Also in the Mahaprajnaparamita Shastra, it is said that there once was a young novice monk who harbored a profound fondness for consuming cheese. He was particularly fond of this delectable dairy product, and precisely because of this deep-seated affection, after he died, it seems, he was reborn as a tiny, insignificant insect, constantly attached to a small, fragile glass bottle, never truly free, forever bound to its surface. He became such a small bug, always remaining inside it. Later, when the monks were carefully handling the novice monk's personal belongings, the Buddha said, "The little bug inside this bottle is my very own little novice. Please do not cause him any harm whatsoever." We sentient beings are sometimes quite terrifying. If some of us do really like to drink coffee, we might end up becoming coffee bugs in the future. Some people truly like to eat delicious chocolate, while others prefer to eat cold ice cream when it comes to food. And there are also some bigger ones. As for the rest, there's no need to mention them. Any kind of attachment, even an attachment as tiny as a sesame seed, can actually bring endless suffering. This is something everyone should be aware of. So when it comes to craving for beautiful forms, it keeps us endlessly revolving in the cycle of samsara indeed, leaving us with absolutely no chance for true liberation. If one, throughout day and night, carefully abandons alluring forms, whether called wonderful forms or beautiful appearances, having severed the demonic sustenance that is hard to renounce, one can thereby eradicate sin at its very root. This means that if someone continuously, without interruption, day and night, every single day, without being careless, diligently and continually, renounces alluring forms and appearances, as was mentioned earlier, because for us, forms and appearances seem to be very beautiful and quite wonderful indeed. But in reality, if you truly analyze them, your faculty of sight and the object cannot make contact. Alluring forms analyzed in the way of the Bodhisattva and the Nagarjuna's precious garland, whether it is a human body or an object, apart from being a collection of minute particles. There is no real and enduring substance to them whatsoever. So in this profound way, it is therefore very important to diligently renounce all alluring and deceptive forms in this present life. The Buddha also wisely said, "Wherever there is desire for alluring things, there will be death. If there is some readily available food, vultures will come." So if we have attachment in our hearts, the harm it brings is inevitable and will naturally come about, whether we like it or not. So what should we cut off? It is this kind of attachment that is hard to abandon. Here, when it talks about food for the demon, actually things such as death or wealth, because indeed these are the very food for the demon king, you see. The main point here is to indicate these things are very difficult for us to cut off. In fact, the meaning is mainly the alluring forms mentioned earlier, because they are food for the demon king. After the demon king consumes this, his power grows stronger and stronger. In the same way, if we find it a little bit hard to give up something that, if we do not abandon this food of the demon king, then it won't work. So what exactly should we cut off? This kind of demonic food, as well as the very root of all sin, because the root of all sin is karma, which is its very own true seed. So if we can cut off this root, if we can eliminate it at the root, then we all have a chance at liberation. But if we do not cut it off and keep nurturing it, if we keep being especially and particularly attached to alluring forms or beauty, if we are particularly greedy for them, in the very end it will only get progressively worse and worse, and we won't even be able to properly adjust our own mindset. If we allow our personal afflictions to grow too much and become overwhelming and consume us, it'll be hard to cut them off. Not only hard to cut them off, but the consequences are frightening. It seems that in the Mahaprajnaparamita Shastra, it mentions that there was once a servant who was especially attached to the king's princess. He even asked his own mother for help and sought help from other deities and so on. He tried many different ways. But in the end, of course, it was impossible. Take India, for example. The caste system there has such huge gaps between classes that a servant could never possibly attain such a thing. When he couldn't get what he wanted, his attachment only grew stronger and stronger. In the end, his own body caught fire, and he burned himself to death. This kind of affliction is truly terrifying. especially in our current modern era, with all kinds of messy media and news outlets, and all sorts of online platforms constantly promoting these things, many people's afflictions are only growing stronger and stronger indeed. This is also a very real problem that needs to be addressed. In fact, sometimes when you look at sentient beings, they are truly pitiful. So here, we should be cautious day and night. It's not just a matter of once or twice, or just paying a little attention during a lecture, and then not caring at all afterwards. It means day and night, at every moment, at any time and any place. If we do this, then not only many people pay more attention while at the Dharma center, but once they actually leave the center, their minds are no longer truly restrained. Some people, when they are around their teacher or Dharma friends, they behave better. But once they're outside, they lack right awareness and mindfulness. Actually, it shouldn't be like this. If we are to fight against our afflictions, then it could be at any time, really. From their early youth to their advanced old age, many elderly practitioners, even though they diligently don't break their sacred precepts and don't commit major negative actions, they are still extremely cautious. Some of the elderly practitioners we know, the accomplished elders, seem to pay even more careful attention to the discernment of cause and effect. They are especially mindful and observant. In virtually any given situation, they are consistently authentic, both inside and out. It's not merely on the surface. Some of us perhaps might be able to manage for a little while, but after some time passes, without right awareness and mindfulness, then this kind of emotional attachment definitely can't be easily eliminated. So this kind of demonic food, we should always treat it as a kind of poison, even though it may seem quite appealing and may look rather comfortable, whether it's greed for wealth, for people, or anything else. It may look like this, but I can't stay in contact with it for too long. Otherwise, for both my present and future lives, it will certainly bring about ruin. With such a truly vigilant mind, one's spiritual practice will definitely make significant progress. The unwholesome appears wholesome, the unattractive appears attractive. Suffering appears as happiness, the negligent will meet with ruin. Here it is also being clearly said that once upon a time when the Buddha was in a humble village, in a cozy home, a family joyfully welcomed a precious baby boy into their lives, bringing immense happiness. At that time, the revered local deity, indeed, went to the Buddha and respectfully said to him, "A certain family has joyfully had a healthy baby boy. That's truly wonderful news indeed." But the Buddha said, "That's not good at all. It's really not good indeed." The deity inquired, "Why is it not good?" Because a young boy was born into this family at first, everyone was truly incredibly happy and overjoyed. And in the meantime, the parents are fond of him. And in the very end, the loving parents have the comforting assurance of being well cared for indeed. It should be a joyful thing, but in the end, the Buddha still insisted, this is not good at all. Then he began to recite this verse. What was the reason behind it? Actually, after this child grew up, he committed many different kinds of karma, all sorts of them. The Buddha must have known about such things indeed, but indirectly, what this truly means is that we ordinary people are often deluded about many things, but we have absolutely no idea about it at all. Here it says that what is unwholesome appears as wholesome. What is in front of us is not wholesome at all. But to ordinary people, it often seems to truly appear as something inherently good. For example, things that are unwholesome or impure, such as certain actions or thoughts, including the human body and many negative karmas, these are truly not wholesome, but in front of other people, these are often seen as good. Take, for instance, some of the delicious food and cuisine in our country nowadays, especially those involving killing living beings. For example, some people swallow small insects, snakes, or frogs alive, swallowing them whole while they're still alive. And they think it's delicious, that it's something really special. Many people around them even praise this. They say, this person is amazing, so brave. He eats with such relish, and so on. People in this world are very ignorant. They mistake what is unwholesome for something good, and what is not beautiful for something beautiful. This is also a kind of deception. In our world, there are water spirits and celestial spirits, some beings whose sole purpose is to confuse sentient beings. It's pretty much like that. Things that were never beautiful to begin with. including many of the objects we love, whether the human body or true nature of material possession, they are not beautiful. They don't contain any element of beauty. But people always really think that they are beautiful. In reality, their nature is impermanent. They are destructive, things that decay and rot. Yet people persist in seeing them as beautiful, things that are not truly sources of happiness, but rather forms of suffering. But in front of ordinary people, they truly seem to be great things that bring joy. This includes things like getting married and starting a family in the world, and the pursuit of wealth and fame in worldly forms. In reality, these are manifestations of the three types of suffering. They are the suffering, the suffering of change, or the suffering of pervasive conditioning. This is their inherent fundamental nature, truly inseparable from them. Yet sentient beings always believe these very things are wonderfully magnificent and precious. So, these profoundly negligent, ignorant people are often tragically destroyed by them without realizing. That's why sometimes we sentient beings are truly quite pitiable. Actually, at that time, what Devadatta said, he also spoke many such things. Similar virtuous practices, similar forms of purity. And the Buddha also responded indirectly to what Devadatta had said in this particular way. In fact, if we now truly listen to and contemplate the principles of Buddhism, some people have already understood them at a fundamental level. If you have this fundamental understanding, as I mentioned earlier, it doesn't mean you can eliminate tendencies, but it will definitely be helpful for your mental continuum. Because when you haven't listened to or contemplated teachings, your character is so stubborn and hard to transform. After listening and contemplating, of course, whether it penetrates your heart or not, is really crucial. Once it truly enters your heart, your current behavior and your mindset, your state will undergo a tremendous transformation. So in this regard, we should also frequently reflect on ourselves. It's not just merely about explaining the verses on a literal level. In fact, we should also approach it from an even higher, more comprehensive and broader level. Moreover, in this current era of chaotic and often overwhelming information readily available on the internet, many people's attention or their fundamental values are completely and utterly deceived by misleading false information from various modern sources. At such critical moments, whenever you encounter any information online future, you must rely on right knowledge and right mindfulness and analyze what is the purpose behind it. Is it really that attractive? Really that good? Really that wonderful? Not necessarily. There is a lot within it that is designed to achieve various purposes. There are all kinds of exaggerations, all sorts of things that are originally true, good and beautiful. But they might be labeled as false, evil and ugly, and things that are originally false, evil and ugly are often transformed in another way, in a different manner, and after being transformed, they attract our attention. When we allow ourselves to become deeply attached and entangled in such circumstances, it resembles voluntarily consuming poison without any awareness. Breaking free from this bondage becomes an extraordinarily challenging endeavor in the end. So, in our current era, it truly is a dazzling and quite overwhelming time. It seems like everything is fine on the surface, but if you really take a closer look, you'll be left absolutely speechless. It's truly and utterly shocking. The entire culture behind it, the core values that underpin it, are so utterly detestable and shameful, yet we have no idea at all. In fact, whether we are users or consumers, we are also quite pitiful. Earlier, I mentioned that those who indulge themselves are utterly ruined. In fact, the truly ignorant, those who indulge are basically the ignorant ones. The ignorant spend every day looking at this kind of information, and they believe it. They even immerse themselves in it. In our world, this might be the greatest ignorance of all. Ignorant people are not necessarily... The ignorant might not do such truly terrible things. Many people who seem quite very smart indeed, actually, in this world, are actually really and truly the absolute worst people, including those old men who are waging wars in the world right now. On the surface, it certainly seems like these individuals, wear formal ties and business suits and are full of self-importance. But in reality, they harm so many sentient beings, and they themselves are ruining both their present and future lives. We could really call them big fools. It's fair to say that, right? It's really like that. Sometimes when you see these people who stir up chaos in the world, who completely disregard the lives of others, simply because they themselves, in their hands, hold only a fleeting power brought by karma, and then use this immense power to destroy so many innocent people. So are these individuals truly considered negligent? They absolutely should be considered negligent. That's precisely why the truly negligent end up causing such widespread destruction. Though one may cherish oneself and pursue pleasure through harmful acts, lasting happiness cannot be found this way. Thus, commit no evil. This is also like a story about a place called Galega, where King Prasenajit went to a quiet place, and he kept thinking to himself, if one truly wants to love oneself in order to be happy, it doesn't seem to be like this. The way many people love themselves nowadays is not genuinely truly loving themselves. That's indeed what he thought. So he then decided to go and seek out the Buddha. He believed that many people in the world today, those who claim to love themselves, actually do not love themselves. They harm themselves. He told this to the Buddha. The Buddha also seemed to agree, saying, yes, for example, if one does good deeds with the body, speaks good words, and thinks good thoughts, then that is truly loving oneself. If it is not like this, then it is not loving oneself. It seems that the Buddha spoke 5 verses about this. The following are these 5 verses. This is the first verse. And then, in a truly terrifying forest, yes, there once was a king, and also there was a person who claimed to deeply love himself, but in reality, he was someone who committed truly evil deeds. Perhaps this was said in reference to that. There are probably several different stories about this. If a person cherishes himself, if someone truly deeply likes himself and genuinely loves himself very much, then, if that's the case, seeking happiness through evil deeds, using one's body, speech, and mind to commit acts like killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, and so on, creating these negative karmas, and then seeking the results of happiness and virtue. This is the happiness one desires in the mind, but the actions are actually the causes of suffering. They are at odds, going in opposite directions. We often talked about it. Then it is difficult to attain happiness. It's impossible. If you create negative karmas and then expect to receive virtuous results, that is fundamentally impossible to achieve. It's really like trying to find comfort in fire. There is no any coldness in fire. This is a fundamental law of nature. If we kill or steal. But worldly people don't talk about it in this particular way. They usually say, make a delicious fish soup, kill a fish properly to make a wonderful soup. And in traditional Confucian culture, this was also common. But to say this will make your parents live longer is simply impossible. It's absolutely not possible at all. And then, to get rich through robbery, that is just not right. Or to kill others for your own benefit, and think you can gain happiness from it. These things are completely contrary to the truth. It's just like trying to find the sensation of coldness in a burning flame, or happiness. It's simply impossible. So we should not commit evil deeds. In our world, even if we can't do good or practice virtuous actions, we should at least try our best not to do evil. The Dharma Sankti Sutra also says, if a person commits various sins, there will not be even a little happiness. If you commit sins, there will be no happiness at all. If you wish for happiness, you should practice all kinds of virtuous deeds. If you truly want to be happy and find lasting peace, you must find a way to cultivate some virtue yourself. This is a law, a fundamental and unbreakable law of nature. So from the very seed of the fire itself, it is impossible for water to arise. From the tiny seed of true happiness comes the abundant fruit of genuine happiness indeed. And from the seed of evil comes the fruit of suffering. This is truly a fundamental law of nature. So when we consistently practice virtuous deeds and actions, many people truly love only themselves, very much indeed. Nowadays, even recently in the world, including on the internet, many people say that you should love yourself. First and foremost, it is truly important to love yourself. However, many of their current methods actually end up harming themselves. I've also posted a few Dharma teachings recently to observe how it all goes. There may be some people who, no matter what, truly, many people want to love themselves. But when it comes to loving themselves, their methods are wrong. They end up doing many things that harm themselves, becoming more and more attached, more and more. Many of the methods in this world are actually self-harming. Many methods are self-harming. From the perspective of Buddhism, if you want to truly love yourself in this life and in future lives too, then you should always use an altruistic mind and deeply contemplate emptiness. In this way, gradually, you will achieve profound understanding. You yourself will also become happier. And the entire surrounding energy and atmosphere will also genuinely create a very positive and supportive overall environment. Otherwise, if a person desperately tries to truly love themselves, but in reality keeps creating negative karma, constantly harming themselves, in the end, neither they nor others are happy. But if you take another approach, with a profoundly relaxed and peaceful mindset and pure, genuine and sincere actions, and do your utmost best to genuinely help others as much as you can, if you truly cannot help others at all, then just take your time to enjoy a cup of tea, light some incense, read a book and find peace in the simple moments, or simply watch the flowers bloom and wither by the window, or listen to the gentle, unending rainfall. There are so many pleasant and relaxing scenes. Maybe you'll truly feel very relaxed and genuinely happy. Otherwise, many people are desperately fighting in wars, desperately trying to find various ways to take others' wealth for themselves and so on and so forth. This particular way will never truly bring about genuine happiness. So as dedicated Mahayana practitioners or as Buddhists, when it comes to our methods and approaches, although ordinary people are inherently selfish and have been so since birth, and it's hard to get rid of this all at once. At the very least, if our method is correct and we proceed step by step, we will reach our goal. So everyone should really reflect on this aspect and think it over carefully. All right, well, that's all for today, everyone, now.
Om